Hello Internet, welcome to Fray Theory, the show where we'll never have an original intro in our lives. Let's talk about boss fights. Boss fights can vary from the coolest shit ever to the worst aspect of any video game. Fighting games probably struggle with this the most out of any genre, but as I've said before, Fraymakers has the potential to flip this script. Indie games host some of the most iconic and badass characters in video game history, and I'd love to see how those translate to a platform fighter like this. Before we begin, just a warning, most of these aren't proper bosses, as in, I mostly went with characters that aren't main antagonists from their home games, but could still be really cool to see. That said, let's get into it.
Darling, you are not ready for what you are about to face.
So if you're not familiar with this character, Eliza is the planned antagonist of Skullgirls 2, but became a DLC character in Skullgirls Second Encore. She's an insanely powerful and ancient warrior under the guise of a diva, both of which have an insatiable bloodlust, as in her powers come from consuming blood. At the end of her campaign in Skullgirls, she found a nigh infinite supply of this stuff and practically ended the world. And where can you go after that except other dimensions? Eliza's got plenty of tools at her disposal to be terrifying, from two massive goons to this weird mic scythe thing that she's practically a god at using, to blood magic, to a whole ass skeleton that comes out and beats the shit out of you. This woman is terrifying and should be a great fit for a boss fight. So Right-Hand Man is a cyborg operative in a powerful crime group called the Top Hats, whose MO in the Henry Stickmin games is to steal priceless artifacts and keep them for their own self-benefit. Therefore, I think the best flimsy explanation for all the fighting this time would be that the Top Hat clan is using some kind of device to travel the worlds and steal artifacts, and Right-Hand Man is here to stop you from stopping them from doing that. For his fight, he'd pull from his cyborg form in completing the mission. So he'd use a massive chunky broadsword for melees, fire off quick energy blasts and teleports, throw massive explosions at the player, and even slow time just to screw with you.
I'm your executioner.
So I might have put Gebel in the thumbnail. Sorry about that, but I haven't actually played Ritual of the Night. So I'm actually going to suggest the final boss of Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, Zangetsu's demon form. This is a tough fight, and this time you'd have to do it without help from Gebel, Evil, or Alfred, which only serves to make the fight tougher. Zangetsu sends demonic essence through the environment, throws out massive energy slashes, and fires off with powerful demonic flame, so it's ill-advised to take him lightly. As for his motivation, well, he's possessed by a power-hungry demon, so reaching into the multiverse to look for more power makes a fair bit of sense, and he'd make for a badass boss fight.
When the wind rustles through the leaves, you can hear the whisper of his name.
So obviously Sylvanos isn't a big bad in Rivals of Aether, but I think their shtick of nature's fury makes for a really cool concept, and I'd love to see it expanded on in a setting where it doesn't need to be balanced with the rest of a roster. Sylvanos' whole deal is allowing nature to consume all, like a cancer. So for the sake of explaining how they're fighting heroes from across the multiverse, you really just need to make up a MacGuffin that allows for universal travel. Shouldn't be that hard, Ori and Shovel Knight managed to get here. Anyways, Sylvanos would pull a lot from their toolkit in Rivals, but they'd also turn the whole environment against you, screwing with platforms and making walls to stop you from hitting them. Basically, they'd be a shitter, not unlike a certain other boss fight I could see happening. So, for those of you who haven't played the Gunvolt games, Teseo's whole gimmick is that he's the fucking worst. He's a troll with a psychic power that lets him rewrite reality, and previously he's used this to throw Gunvolt and Beck from Mighty No. 9 into a digital hellscape for them to fight for this livestream. In the context of Fraymakers, he'd basically be doing that, but bigger, forcing all kinds of warriors from across the multiverse to throw down for his own amusement. The fight would involve Teseo summoning his mech, shooting at you with projectiles, smacking you with the big ol' robo-fists, and even using Twitch chat to try and kill you. And you'd have to use these epic gamer PC cooling fans to climb up to his weak point and smack him down.
Risky Boots, Queen of the Seven Seas. Another perfect heist.
So this one's pretty basic, but it's also pretty easy to explain. Risky's whole shtick is being a greedy pirate, so traveling the multiverse searching for plunder makes sense. For her fight, she'd pull a lot from her own skills in Half Genie Hero, as well as her boss fights throughout the series. There'd be one phase with Risky aboard some sort of contraption, preferably made of tech from a bunch of other worlds, followed up by a duel to the death, all with some high-stakes music and heart-pounding action. So this is probably the character that makes the least sense, but honestly, I don't care. Zubaz would be sick. For those unfamiliar, Zubaz is a character quote-unquote invented by the Super Best Friends as the game character who never got a game. He's the people's champ in an online wrestling series, as well as a cameo maker in Dive Kick, Shovel Knight, and maybe invisible in Pocket Rumble, I'm kinda not sure. As such, he's come to Fraymakers to show all these scrub characters that he's boss. He's a whip-wielding wrestler with electricity powers, so his game plan during the fight is to use his whip to keep you in close range, then use lightning and various suplexes, and other wrestling terms which I definitely know, to keep you from having fun. He's brutal up close, so you've got to keep your distance or find a way to match his power. In all honesty, this character's just amazing, to the point that he was my most wanted for quite some time. But honestly, during the writing of this script, I've had a change of heart, and I have a new most wanted boss fight. That being...
Monster Prom, be your worst self.
So for anyone unfamiliar with Monster Prom or its potential romances, let me catch you up to speed. Monster Prom is a competitive dating sim about romancing various icons of evil and darkness, as well as Scott, and Zoe. And I guess Calculaster, but you know, AI, up to interpretation. Of these creatures of the night, Vera might just be the worst of them all. She's what I made the conscious choice to write in the script as a quote-unquote Gorgon girl boss, with not a care in the world for what it takes to make money, and she's more than happy to exploit any worker she needs to get her way. As for why she's here, well, she's a businesswoman, so I'm guessing she knows how big crossovers are these days. So she throws together a fighting tournament with warriors of tons of different dimensions just so she can live stream it, monetize it, and write off the expenses for the multidimensional equipment on her taxes. But that doesn't really explain how she'd fight, and her home game doesn't give us much to go off of. But I'm willing to make it work if you're willing to stay with me. See, Vera's not just broadcasting fights. She's also stealing fancy toys to add to her arsenal. So all of her attacks come from powerful weapons from across the indie game multiverse. For instance, she could have an attack where she chucks up the boomerang scythes from Bloodstained, or an attack where she beats her opponent with the shovel blade. Hell, she could even have a phase of the fight where she summons a security team to deal with you, and on that security team is Zubaz. This concept just has an insane amount of potential, and I'd love to see it come to fruition. Hey, so this game doesn't really apply to the subject of the video, but it definitely warrants a mention: Unbeatable. This game's getting kickstarted right now. There's still time when this video goes up, and hot damn, I have to recommend it. It's a rhythm game animated in the style of Studio Trigger anime, if Studio Trigger made Gurren Lagann in the 90s. And this game has such a perfect vibe. It's so chock full of nostalgia for an era that I wasn't even around for. It's got fantastic music, it's got a really interesting story concept, and it's already been backed fully, but if this stuff sounds dope to you, which it should, please consider checking it out. I'll leave links to the Kickstarter and both demos in the description. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'm really glad people are enjoying this content. If you want to see some more, consider checking out the rest of the channel. Like, subscribe, bell, Twitter, all that jazz. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.